We are back continuing my Toku journey once again. You know, I wasn't actually planning on making this video as soon as I ended up doing so, since I didn't initially plan on finishing up Kamen Rider Kuuga as quickly as I did. See, I was 25 episodes in when I made my Jetman video, and now, well, I'm finished. In fact, I finished a few weeks ago. I finished a week after I made that video, in fact. I zoomed through the rest of it pretty quickly, so it's safe to say now that I've transitioned. No, that sounds like a completely different sentence out loud. I've been enlightened by the gods of media consumption and brought forth into the light of tokusatsu. Because, yeah, Kamen Rider Kuuga is pretty goddamn amazing. And I was blown away with my first Kamen Rider show already. Ryuki was such a fun time with surprisingly thorough character writing and emotional highs that I thought it just had to be a fluke. Like, there was no way that this franchise was just always this good. But I was wrong, it's always been this good. Now, Kamen Rider Kuuga is certainly a much different show in comparison to Ryuki. I know it's considered a good starting point for new fans just like Ryuki is, but honestly, I feel like I've been spoiled with these two shows so far. Now, Ryuki is a lot more action-packed, full of so many different riders with different interesting and unique powers, with dramatic subplots that connect every fighter to one another in this big mystery of what the hell is causing the mirror world to act up as it is, and why the riders need to fight to stop it. And Kamen Rider Kuuga is certainly action-packed. It needs to be, after all, it's Kamen Rider. But there's a lot more breathing space here. There's only one singular rider in this show, and we never get another. He has a lot of different forms, but he's still just the one guy. So that gives him a lot of weight to carry on his own for the 50 episodes we get to follow him. With that, we see his interactions with non-hostile and non-fighter characters take up most of the screen time for every episode, with the action being more of a backdrop most of the time. So basically, Kamen Rider Kuuga is a J-drama mystery that just so happens to have a superhero in it. That's basically what this show is. It is the polar opposite of Ryuki, and yet they're both so good. These two shows are so utterly different whilst carrying the same spirit and energy that I just get it. I get the hype. I understand what people have been telling me about Toku now. There's so much variety, so much character, so much good. I'm sure my opinions will change once I get to the quote-unquote bad seasons, but for now, I'm enjoying myself pretty damn well. As I stated before, Kuuga only follows one rider, being the titular one hosted by Yusuke Godai, a dude that is pretty silly. He's not all too different from Shinji and Ryuki, and I think the only real difference between them is that Yusuke isn't a moron and has a much more clear motivation. Shinji's whole shtick was searching for a reason to fight, while Yusuke's is pretty much made up from the beginning of the show. His whole goal is just to make people smile. He wants a world full of happy people like himself, so he'll continue to fight for the sake of other people's smiles and joy. And you know what? That's pretty damn sweet. It's cute. I like it. It's childish, but it embodies what these superhero characters are all about. Yusuke's main flaws only really come out of his kindness and caring attitude. It becomes a point later on in the show that his obsession with fighting and getting stronger for the sake of others is starting to take a toll on his own body, as the powers of Kuuga are simply too much for an ordinary human like himself to handle. After all, Kuuga is a power that isn't necessarily meant for good. It's a harbinger of darkness, a curse, and yet Yusuke continues using this curse as if it's the world's greatest retribution, like the gods gave it to him for the sake of saving people. And I really like that. One of my favorite tropes in action storytelling is when a character has a power that's meant to be corrupt and evil, but the character given said power does whatever they can to use it as responsibly as possible for the sake of good and helping others. And Yusuke is probably one of the best examples of this. And I really love how they showcase Yusuke's kindness, because he's never pushy with it, nor is he ignorant. There are times where he goes past boundaries or is in over his head, but he's always so tender, so it doesn't really annoy you as a viewer. My favorite example of this comes during a mini arc within the halfway point of the season. Yusuke's elementary school teacher, who's his biggest inspiration in life, tells Yusuke that one of his current students have run away to downtown Japan, and he doesn't know why, nor does he know where he is. But instead of forcing the kid to go home, Yusuke and others just monitor him and make sure he's safe during his journey through Japan, until Yusuke finally decides to talk to the kid, who reveals that he ran away because it's the first thing he's ever felt like he's done on his own accord. It feels like the first choice he's made on his own, as everything else in his life has already been decided for him, and he doesn't know what he's gonna do in life when he's older if his life is constantly dictated for him. And that's when Yusuke tells him this: everyone worries their way into growing up. As long as you're alive, you're right where you belong. I think you've been a bit too obedient. And I absolutely love this quote, because he doesn't give the kid a clear direction rather than vague advice, which fits into what the kid is asking for to begin with. He doesn't want to feel like his path is being made for him. He feels like he's losing his independence to routine. So Yusuke just gives him this simple piece of advice: to be less obedient, accept your worries, stay right where you are until you've made your decision, and then you can act on it. There's no need to rush, because you have plenty of time, even if it feels like it's going by far too fast. The show is full of lessons like these that don't try to dictate anything for you, rather than give you an alternative. Characters that are going through trouble or looking for a way out of it are helped by Yusuke, whether it be through himself or through his powers as Kuuga, but he doesn't decide anything for them. That's up to them to do. Yusuke is just there to support everyone. He's a pillar for everybody else to stand on in order to find a new way, and I think that's what I like the most about him as a protagonist. He drives the story forward in a way that makes other characters act on their own rather than act for him. Overall, I think gaining freedom and breaking the mold and being yourself rather than what everyone else sees you as is a big recurring theme of this show. Yusuke does that through fighting for others when everyone initially sees him as a threat, and even when he's expected to become the literal incarnation of the devil, he still does not accept that and continues fighting for good. Well, let me just say, Yusuke still has his breaking points. One of my favorite arcs in the entire show features an unidentified life form who's going around and preying on young men at a local all-boys school in Japan, picking them off one by one, causing mass panic and hysteria within the campus that even drives one of the students to taking their own life. It's a very serious and very dark subject for a show like this to cover, and the burden of these stolen lives weigh heavily on Yusuke and Ichijo's shoulders, as they're unable to catch or beat him for quite some time, leaving many lives lost and many more to come. So when Yusuke finally gets his hands on him, he does not hold any punches. There's little music, little dialogue, just constant screaming and repetitive punching. He doesn't even pull out his weapons until he's at the very end of the fight. He just wants to beat this one villain down until his blood is all over his suit. It's the first time we see the bad guys truly bleeding in this show. Yusuke pummels him to a bloody pulp and even considers using his most destructive powers on the life form with the cops and innocents still nearby, because he's so full of rage and hate for just that one moment that he'd consider throwing all of this progress away just to rid the world of this one vile, sick being that's robbed so many innocent people of their lives. It's one of the most intense and heart-stopping moments of the season, and the moment where I realized that Yusuke was a lot more unpredictable than I initially thought he was. This is probably my favorite individual arc in the show, even though there are a lot of great ones because of the way it got me to react. If I could show y'all, I would, because my jaw actually dropped. It's easy to see why Joe Odagiri is one of the more famous and accomplished Kamen Rider actors, because his ability to express this underlying emotion without focusing on outward expression is second to none. He's an amazing actor and his performance as Yusuke is top notch, so I recommend everyone go check out the many movies he's been in. He's worked with a lot of great directors. And that actually kind of reminds me of just how badly Kuuga gets his ass beat on several occasions in the show. This guy does not get any breaks. He loses just as much, if not more, than he wins. You really get the feeling that he's fighting for his life in these episodes, and I think that helps the action feel a lot more intense and high voltage, despite the rather repetitive choreography and limited movement. I definitely enjoy Ryuki's action a lot more, but the fights in Kuuga are a lot more intense to sit through, because you're constantly worrying that Yusuke might get his shit rocked or someone else might get hurt. And I think that's another big strength that this show has. With the fact that the monsters are actually in the real world, a major point brought up in this show is how the unidentified life forms actually affect the world around around our characters. There's a police force tasked specifically for them, there's news stations dedicated to updating Japan on their appearances, and there's constant citywide evacuations and lockdowns because of the destruction and body count their presence brings. Nowhere ever feels safe, because no one ever is. You could find a dangerous, murderous beast just around the corner, and there's no guarantee that Kuuga will be able to save you despite how much he tries. They really hammer home the notion that these guys need to go, and they need to go fast. Kuuga is literally their only hope. But even with Yusuke being the one everyone relies on, it doesn't make the central characters useless or lesser. Hell, my favorite character isn't even Yusuke, it's his partner Ichijo the detective. He's kind of the cliche, stoic, cold detective who doesn't really say what he's feeling, but he's not the hardened asshole that most detectives in film and TV are. He's just as tender as Yusuke, and just as kind-hearted if anything. He loves people, he wants to help people, he does everything he can to help Yusuke, even if he's going against protocol because he knows it'll help the most people. In all honesty, this guy could have been a writer and it would have worked, but I like that he stayed a cop for the entirety of the show instead. His dynamic with Yusuke is probably my favorite aspect of the show. Up to the very, very final episode, their connection to each other is just so sweet and so lovable. They have one of the best hero-detective dynamics I've seen in any show, movie, or anything I've seen at all in general, because of just how deeply tender and kind they both are as people. You see this a lot in the final battle of the show between Kuuga and the final boss of everything. It's a very mellow fight. It's probably the least destructive fight in the entire show. They're just throwing punches at each other. And Yusuke looks heartbroken to be fighting like this, and Ichijo looks even more heartbroken to see Yusuke being fought against like this. It's one of the most interesting ways to do a final battle that I've seen, and I love it so much for that. A lot of the side cast gets plenty of shine due to the more dramatic focused subplots that make up for most of our screen time in the episodes. Near the end of the show, episode 46, where Yusuke unlocks the black form of Kuuga, there's another storyline going on between the scientist Hikari and her son. She's been rather absent in his life due to how busy she's been, and eventually he snaps and hides away from her. This leads to an emotional speech and exchange from Hikari as she apologizes to her son from the bottom of her heart for being so absent from her child's life, and that while she can't do the things that most parents do for their kids, she'll do whatever she can to find something that only she can do for him, and no one else. And to be honest, that's the closest any of these shows have gotten me to tearing up. Obviously, you don't see most parents doing this in real life, so seeing it happen here was a very sweet and heartfelt thing that truly felt from the heart. And that's kind of what this whole show is from start to finish. Heartfelt interactions between characters that are just trying to do their best, despite not really knowing how to, pushing themselves past their limits even if it may hurt them, because at the very least, they'll be helping someone in the process. Whether it be one person or 100, if there's one thing I got out of Kuuga, it's that warm-hearted feeling to push kindness forward, and a far more personal relationship than I've had with my prior Toku shows. So yeah, Kamen Rider Kuuga is also a pretty damn amazing show. I really can't find anything bad to say about it. This is damn near perfect. That's gonna do it for my review. Next up on my list is Ichijo, which I've surprisingly not heard that much about, so I'm pretty excited. Of course, that's my next Kamen Rider show. The next Toku series I review is going to be a different one. Some of you may know already, but I won't be speaking any further. It's Zyuranger. It's Zyuranger. Okay, you guys already know. But that's gonna do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, and I really hope you did, leave a like down below and comment down your favorite Kamen Rider season, or just your favorite Kamen Rider in general. It could be a main one, a secondary one, a tertiary one, any at all. If you want to see more Toku videos from me, obviously leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel, and share the video with your friends too so that I can get more traction on this channel, because I'm gonna be posting a lot more. With all that being said, that's gonna do it today. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day.